significant fact that's not widely known is that surgeons will often lose the needle while they're operating on a patient. And they have to either find it or in some cases leave it. The event seems to happen as much as 250,000 times per year, and it's something that they have to deal with. Let me show you quickly how it might happen. Now, this is a robotic surgical procedure. It's wrapping up, and you'll notice here he's beginning to essentially close off the suture and remove the needle, and boom, it just flew away. Watch this in slow motion. Just to let you know, it took the surgeon 50 minutes to find this needle. The process was first observed by my colleague Sam Wepperin, who's a robotic doctor in training at Temple University in Philadelphia. And he observed a prostatectomy where the surgeon had done a fabulous job, had accomplished the surgery. It was done professionally and to great effect. But at the end, the needle went rogue. And then the surgeon, unfortunately, who had done a great job, had to spend an hour searching for that needle and ultimately was unsuccessful. The patient had to be closed. They couldn't keep the process open any longer. And so the net result was the surgeon had to tell the patient that, oh, your surgery was fine, but oh, I left a needle in you. And if you have a CAT scan or something of that type in the future, they will see it. He went back and talked to his colleague, Dr. Dan Yoon, who's the head of robotic surgery at Temple. And they thought about this problem and said there ought to be a way. And they started to experiment. They explored several different kinds of technologies, finally enlisted the assistance of Dr. John Knoll, a biomedical physicist also at Temple. And as a result, they came up with this product called the Melzi Needle Finder. You can see a picture of the actual first prototype. It was designed to be used in both open, laparoscopic, and surgical procedures. The question now is, how big is this problem? First off, the Joint Commission, the organization that deals with patient safety and quality, basically reports that lost or unintentionally retained foreign objects are the most commonly reported never event for the last 10 years. So it's been going on for a long time, and it seems to be avoiding any kind of effective solution. The surgeons experienced lost needles in minimally invasive surgery. Half of them have reported that it's happened to them in the last 12 months. And in fact, further surveys that we do has indicated it's to be even more extensive than that. So the question then is, of course, why is this happening? Well, the first issue is the size of needles. Because of the use of magnification such, they're using smaller and smaller devices, so the needles being used are actually smaller. There's also, because of the laparoscopic or robotic surgery process, we're usually working through a camera which has limited field of vision, so that they can only see a portion of the operating theater. And then finally, because they're working with tools as opposed to direct with their hands, the feedback, there's limited tactile feedback, and the manipulation is somewhat more difficult. Just back to the picture we saw earlier about the lost surgical needle, is I remember that when this happens, the surgeons really don't like to have to tell their patient that, hey, we left a needle. So they will spend amazing amounts of time, and they'll even call for X-ray, which is in some cases told that they shouldn't do. For example, the typical case is that many surgeons will spend as more as 5, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. In some cases, they're just never found. There's a challenge in searching, and this video will quickly give you a demonstration of just what the surgeon's up to when he's searching. Now, this is a time lapse. We've sped it up, so it's going much faster. But you see they're having to search, and they do an organized process, but you can see the environment is pretty difficult. In this particular case, X-ray was then called in. The small size of the needle did not allow them to see it. The X-ray couldn't find it. The surgeon kept searching, and 20 minutes later was able to locate it. Again, I mentioned that X-ray has become impaired when the needles are small size. So essentially, the recommendation is if you're dealing with a needle smaller than 17 millimeters in size, you should just leave it. The medical advice is actually that may be better than keeping the patient open or having an X-ray. The other thing to mention is that in many of the cases where a problem is discovered later, after the patient's been closed and already released, and then they find that there was a needle lost, and over 80% of those cases, the needle or count or the effort to find the needles was thought to be accurate, and they didn't think they had a problem. The solution that our firm has addressed is the Sharps Finder. It's basically designed to work in open, laparoscopic, or robotic surgeries. Has a 45 millimeter shaft that allows it to work through either a laparoscopic or robotic shaft. Includes basically a magnetometer at the tip that identifies magnetic field changes, and then a microcontroller in the handle that allows those changes to be analyzed. The way the product works, we can demonstrate here in an animal trial. This was using our prototype and was in a pig, and also, again, in a robotic situation. So you can note that in this case, the surgeon's probing. He's using the system to move it around. At this point, the device has signaled a loud and constant signal and says there's something near here, something's going on. So the surgeon's spending a little time hunting around, but he knows now where he needs to look. And so, because he continues to look, all of a sudden, he'll be able to say, somewhere in this area, and there he can see it. He can reach in and grab it. There's the actual way that the product functions. Just a couple of closing comments about how the product, about the value of the product to hospitals. This example here, this child had actually a miracle surgery that was performed at the All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. The child probably would have died if it hadn't had this very special cardiac surgery. And the consequence, though, was that the surgeon left the needle and refused to acknowledge that it had been left. As a consequence, and make a long story short, the parents actually had to go to another hospital, have it identified, and then have it removed from a different location. But the problem that actually resulted here was that there was a public notice, big event in terms of lawsuits. This hospital actually stopped complex surgeries. People in the hospital lost their jobs, and it even affected Johns Hopkins' reputation because of its affiliation up in the Maryland area. The other question people ask is, well, it doesn't happen very often. Why should we have such a device? And the example we like to point to is that in surgery theaters every year, there's about 600 fires. You have cauterization, you have oxygen, so the potential for fire is quite prevalent. It doesn't happen often, only 600 times out of millions of, tens of millions of surgical procedures. It's not that big of a deal. But of course, every surgical center will have a fire extinguisher, and the reason why is you have the tool to deal with a problem when it occurs. In our case, we're dealing with off-needle events that happen an estimated 250,000 times a year, and there's the reason why we suggest that somebody should have the Melzi Sharps Finder. I would recommend or ask, we're in the mode now, we've produced the product, we've just about finished the development. We expect to have FDA clearance in the next 2 months, and we're looking for a strategic partnership with firms that can help us either with sales and or manufacturing. So look forward to speaking.